Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into a case that shook the city of Memphis and left a family shattered.
The murder of Lorenzen Wright. It's
Exactly.
a story that, you almost can't believe it when you first hear about it.
Right. Imagine this. A celebrated athlete, a hometown hero, vanishes without a trace.
Yeah.
Then a chilling 911 call surfaces riddled with the unmistakable sound of gunshots.
Yeah.
But it's tragically ignored for days.
Days.
This is a story about a life cut short, a mystery that gripped a nation, and a truth that took nearly a decade to uncover.
Yeah. So much about this case is just, it's captivating. I mean, it's got all these elements
Mhm.
to it that really draw you in.
Yeah, you're right. And to fully grasp the depth of this tragedy, we need to first understand the man at its center, Lorenzen Wright.
Right.
He was more than just an NBA player.
Sure.
He was a beacon of hope for Memphis,
Yeah.
a symbol of success who never forgot where he came from.
Right. And his story really resonates with people because he had, kind of a classic kind of American dream story where he, started from humble beginnings and made it to the top.
Yeah, he was born in Mississippi, but blossomed in Memphis. His journey from a standout high school player at Booker T. Washington to a dominant force at the University of Memphis captured the city's heart.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, his talent was undeniable. A 6'11" powerhouse with a grace that defied his size.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch him play, it was like poetry in motion.
And when the Los Angeles Clippers drafted him, it felt like a collective win for Memphis.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the whole city was behind him.
And then when he returned to play for the Grizzlies in 2001, the city erupted in celebration.
Oh, it was like a homecoming, like a hero's return.
Like their native son had come home.
Right.
But Lorenzen's impact extended far beyond the basketball court.
Oh, absolutely.
He was deeply committed to his community, pouring his time and resources into philanthropic work,
Yeah.
becoming a role model for countless young people.
And that's what makes this whole case so tragic. You have this figure who represented so much good in the community, and for him to meet such a violent, and it's heartbreaking.
And that darkness began to descend in July of 2010.
Yeah.
Lorenzen, having retired from the NBA, was living in Atlanta but returned to Memphis to visit his children.
Right.
He was co-parenting with his ex-wife, Shara, his high school sweetheart.
All right.
It was a seemingly ordinary Sunday night when he dropped off their son at Shara's house.
Mm-hmm.
And then around 10 p.m., his friend Phil Dodson dropped Lorenzen off. And that was the last confirmed sighting of him alive.
Right.
2 days later, the alarm bells began to ring. His mother, Deborah Marion, started frantically calling around her intuition, screaming that something was terribly wrong.
And, a mother's intuition is a powerful thing.
Lorenzen wouldn't just disappear, especially not without contacting his kids.
No, not at all. And what's even more disturbing is that, unbeknownst to everyone at the time, a clue to Lorenzen's fate was sitting in the records of the Germantown Police Department. A chilling piece of evidence that would remain tragically overlooked for days.
Just hours after Lorenzen was last seen,
Mm-hmm.
a 911 call came in around 12:05 a.m. on July 19th.
Right in the middle of the night.
The call was brief, chaotic, punctuated by the unmistakable sound of 11 gunshots.
11 gunshots.
But tragically, the dispatcher couldn't pinpoint the exact location.
Right.
And for reasons that are still debated today, no one investigated further.
And that's one of the most frustrating aspects of this whole case. You have this potential lifeline, this cry for help,
Right.
and it's just ignored.
Those gunshots, now etched into the fabric of this case, were the sounds of a life slipping away, a desperate plea for help lost in the static of a flawed system.
And you have to wonder, if they had responded to that call, what would have happened?
It wasn't until 9 days later, with Lorenzen's family already fearing the worst, that the connection was made between that 911 call and his disappearance.
Right.
The realization hit like a ton of bricks. Valuable time had been lost, opportunities missed, and a sense of urgency replaced by the crushing weight of dread.
Yeah, you can just imagine the agony that his family must have been going through during those 9 days, not knowing what had happened to him.
And that delayed response would forever cast a shadow over the investigation.
Absolutely.
It highlights the critical importance of those initial hours in a missing person case.
Right. Every minute counts.
The agonizing truth that every minute counts when someone's life hangs in the balance.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The search intensified, now fueled by the horrifying possibility that Lorenzen had met with foul play.
Yeah.
Then on July 28th, the news that everyone had been dreading arrived. Lorenzen's body was found discarded in a remote wooded area about 20 miles outside of Memphis.
It was a devastating discovery.
He had been shot multiple times with 2 different guns, The brutality of the scene, the callous disregard for human life sent shockwaves through Memphis.
It was just a senseless act of violence.
The question that now consumed everyone was who could have done this to Lorenzen Wright, and why?
And that's the question that investigators had to grapple with as they began to piece together the puzzle of his life and death.
Suspicion naturally fell on those closest to him, and the investigation began to dissect his life, his relationships, his finances,
Yeah.
any potential enemies he might have had.
Mm-hmm.
And what they found was far more complex than anyone could have imagined.
Yeah.
For instance, despite earning millions during his NBA career,
Yeah.
Lorenzen was facing significant financial struggles at the time of his death.
Right.
He had 2 homes in danger of foreclosure, and his ex-wife, Shara, claimed they were constantly grappling with financial instability.
It's a reminder that, even those who achieve great success can struggle with financial issues.
Yeah, this stark contrast between his public image of success and his private financial woes raised a lot of questions.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what was going on behind the scenes.
Adding to the intrigue was a car sale that Lorenzen had made shortly before his disappearance. He sold 2 of his luxury cars to a man named Bobby Cole, who turned out to have ties to a drug syndicate.
Yeah, that definitely raised some eyebrows.
This connection, while ultimately cleared by the DEA, cast a shadow of doubt over Lorenzen's judgment and fueled speculation about his potential involvement in risky dealings.
And when you're dealing with a case like this, any connection to the criminal underworld is going to be scrutinized.
And then there was Shara. As Lorenzen's ex-wife, she was immediately thrust into the spotlight.
Right.
Her every word scrutinized, her every action analyzed.
And, it's understandable that people would be looking at her closely given the circumstances.
She gave several interviews in the days following his disappearance, appearing distraught and pleading for a safe return.
Yeah, but as the investigation progressed, her story began to shift, raising red flags and casting a cloud of suspicion over her.
First, she claimed Lorenzen left her house with a box of drugs, hinting at his involvement in a dangerous situation.
Right.
Then she alleged that he was being stalked by unknown men in the days leading up to his disappearance.
And these shifting narratives, combined with the fact that she received a $1 million life insurance payout after his death, made many people question her truthfulness.
And that suspicion only intensified when she spent that $1 million in a mere 10 months, indulging in a lavish lifestyle that seemed at odds with her claims of financial hardship.
Right.
It was a pattern of behavior that seemed difficult to reconcile.
It definitely raised more questions than it answered.
Despite the mounting suspicions and the swirling rumors, the case remained unsolved.
Right.
Years passed, and the hope of finding Lorenzen's killer began to dwindle.
Yeah.
The city of Memphis, once united in grief and outrage, began to resign itself to the possibility that justice might never be served.
It's a tough pill to swallow when you think that someone can get away with such a heinous crime.
But then, 7 years after that fateful night, a remarkable breakthrough occurred, a twist of fate that would reignite the investigation and send shockwaves through the community.
It was like something out of a movie.
In November 2017, a tip led investigators to a lake in Mississippi.
Yeah.
There, submerged beneath the murky water, lay the gun believed to have been used to kill Lorenzen Wright.
It was an incredible discovery.
It was a discovery that defied the odds.
Yeah, after all those years, for that gun to turn up, it was almost unbelievable.
A tangible link to the past that promised to finally unlock the secrets of that July night.
It was a game changer.
It was a pivotal moment in the case, reawakening a sense of hope that justice might finally be within reach.
It gave everyone involved a renewed sense of purpose.
But what unfolded next was a series of events that no one could have predicted, a cascade of revelations that would expose a web of deceit and betrayal far more intricate than anyone could have imagined.
And that's where we'll pick up next time, as we delve into the arrests, the accusations, and the shocking truth that slowly began to emerge from the shadows.
We'll explore the prosecution's case, the evidence they presented, and the tangled relationships that ultimately led to Lorenzen Wright's tragic demise. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Lorenzen Wright case. Last time we left off with the discovery of the murder weapon after 7 years, a pivotal moment that reignited the investigation. What happened next?
Well, the recovery of the gun was just the beginning. A month later, in December 2017, police made an arrest, but it wasn't who everyone expected.
Oh, really?
The suspect was Billy Ray Turner, a landscaper and deacon at Shara's church.
A deacon at Shara's church? Wow, it seems like such an unlikely connection.
Yeah, on the surface, absolutely. Billy Ray presented himself as a devout, hardworking man respected in his community, but investigators soon unearthed a hidden chapter in his life. a past that painted a far more complicated picture.
What did they find?
Well, it turned out that Billy Ray had a prior criminal history. He had served time for assault and kidnapping years earlier, a fact that many people, even those close to him, were completely unaware of. This revelation shattered the image of the gentle, pious man and raised serious questions about his potential involvement in Lorenzen's death.
That's a pretty significant red flag.
Yeah.
So how did investigators connect Billy Ray to the actual crime?
Well, remember the gun that was recovered from the lake. Well, after extensive analysis, investigators were able to trace it directly back to Billy Ray Turner. It was a crucial piece of evidence, a direct link between him and the murder weapon.
So with this discovery, Billy Ray becomes a prime suspect. But what about Shara? Where does she fit into all of this?
Well, the investigation took another dramatic turn just 10 days after Billy Ray's arrest. Shara Wright was apprehended in California and charged with Lorenzen's murder. It was a bombshell announcement that sent shockwaves through Memphis.
Wow.
All those years of speculation, all those whispers about her possible involvement suddenly crystallized into a formal accusation.
It must have been a vindication for Lorenzen's family and friends, who had long suspected she knew more than she was letting on.
Oh, absolutely. But with the arrests came the need for answers, for a clear understanding of what happened that night and how these seemingly disparate individuals, a former NBA star, a church deacon, and an ex-wife, could be entangled in such a horrific crime.
So as the legal proceedings got underway, what was the prosecution's theory? How did they piece together the events that led to Lorenzen's death?
Well, the prosecution alleged that Shara and Billy Ray were having an affair and that together they hatched a plan to kill Lorenzen and collect on his $1 million life insurance policy. It was a chilling theory, one that painted a picture of cold-blooded greed and a shocking betrayal of trust.
But was there enough evidence to support such a bold claim? What did they present to convince a jury of their guilt?
Well, the prosecution built their case on a combination of circumstantial evidence and witness testimony. They pointed to Shara's inconsistent statements to police her sudden influx of wealth after Lorenzen's death and the rapid depletion of that money on a lavish lifestyle. These actions, they argued, didn't align with her claims of grief and financial hardship.
But remember, she had maintained that Lorenzen was involved in dangerous drug deals, that he had been stalked by unknown men, and that his death was the result of those risky associations.
Yes, but the prosecution meticulously dismantled those claims, presenting evidence that contradicted her story. They brought in experts who testified that there was no credible evidence to support her allegations about Lorenzen's involvement in drug activity. They argued that her shifting narratives were a desperate attempt to deflect attention away from herself and her accomplice, Billy Ray Turner.
It sounds like a pretty convincing argument. But what about Billy Ray? What was his role in all of this?
Well, the prosecution painted him as Shara's muscle, the one who carried out the actual murder. They emphasized his prior convictions for violent crimes, arguing that he had the capacity for brutality and was willing to do Shara's bidding. They presented evidence that placed him at the crime scene, further solidifying his involvement.
And this is where that third person you mentioned earlier comes in, right? Shara's cousin, Jimmy Martin.
You're exactly right. Jimmy Martin was already serving time for an unrelated murder when he came forward with information about Lorenzen's case. He claimed to have been involved in the murder plot from the beginning, alleging that he helped Shara and Billy Ray plan the murder and even assisted in cleaning up the crime scene and disposing of the weapon.
It gets mind-boggling to think about. He's already in prison for murder, and now he's implicating himself in another one. Why would he do that?
Yeah. Well, his motives remain somewhat murky. Some speculate he was hoping to gain leniency in his own case by cooperating with authorities. Others believe he may have had a falling out with Shara and sought revenge. Whatever his reasons, his testimony added another layer of complexity to an already tangled web of accusations.
So faced with this mounting evidence and the prospect of a lengthy trial, did Shara and Billy Ray maintain their innocence, or did they crack under the pressure?
Well, Billy Ray remains steadfast in his denials, insisting he had nothing to do with Lorenzen's death. But Shara, in a surprising turn of events, decided to strike a deal with the prosecution.
A plea deal. What did that entail?
She agreed to plead guilty to facilitation of first-degree murder. In essence, she admitted to playing a role in the planning and execution of Lorenzen's death without directly taking his life in exchange for her plea. The prosecution agreed to a 30-year prison sentence.
So she avoids a potential life sentence, but still faces a significant amount of time behind bars. It seems like a mixed bag, both a confession and an attempt to mitigate the consequences of her actions.
It's a complex situation. For sure. Some people saw it as a victory, a clear admission of guilt that brought a sense of closure to the case. Others felt it was a way for her to avoid full accountability to escape the harshest possible punishment.
And what about Billy Ray? What happened to him after Shira took the plea deal?
He went to trial, and in 2022, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison.
So in the end, justice was served, at least in the eyes of the law, but I imagine it doesn't erase the pain and loss for Lorenzen's loved ones.
Absolutely. The verdicts brought a sense of resolution, but they couldn't bring back the father, son, and friend that Memphis had lost.
It's a heartbreaking reminder that even with convictions, some wounds never fully heal. But even with these outcomes, there are still some lingering questions, some loose ends that remain untied. Is that right?
You're absolutely right. While the plea deal and the trial provided a framework for understanding what happened to Lorenzen, they also generated new questions, new avenues of inquiry. The story, it seems, is far from over.
It's intriguing. Well, we'll have to delve into those lingering questions and explore the complexities of the trial and its aftermath when we return for the final part of our deep dive. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been meticulously unraveling the layers of the Lorenzen Wright murder case, a story that's both captivating and deeply unsettling. We've seen how a missing person case morphed into a murder investigation and how a seemingly straightforward narrative took a series of dramatic turns, revealing a web of betrayal and deceit that shocked a nation.
Yeah, it's a case that, reminds us that truth is often far more complex than it initially appears. And as we delve into this final chapter of the story, we're going to examine the trial, the verdicts, and the lingering questions that persist even after justice has seemingly been served.
You mentioned earlier that Shara's plea deal, while bringing a sense of closure, also left some unanswered questions. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure, by accepting the plea deal, Shara avoided a full trial, which meant that certain details surrounding the murder plot and the extent of her involvement were never fully aired in court. The specifics of her role in orchestrating Lorenzen's death, her motivations, and the depth of her relationship with Billy Ray Turner remained shrouded in a degree of ambiguity.
It's almost like a puzzle with some pieces missing. We have a general understanding of the picture, but there are gaps that may never be completely filled.
Exactly. And this ambiguity has fueled much speculation and debate, leaving many to wonder if the full truth will ever be known.
What about Billy Ray Turner's trial? His case proceeded to court, didn't it?
Yes, it did, and it was a closely watched affair, with the prosecution meticulously laying out their case against him. They presented evidence linking him to the murder weapon, placing him at the scene of the crime, and establishing his capacity for violence through his prior convictions.
And you mentioned earlier that Jimmy Martin Shara's cousin played a key role in the prosecution's case. Did he testify at the trial?
He did, and his testimony was both compelling and controversial. He provided detailed accounts of the alleged murder plot, claiming to have been involved in its planning and execution alongside Shara and Billy Ray.
Wow, his testimony must have been quite damaging to Billy Ray's defense.
It was, however. The defense vigorously challenged Martin's credibility, highlighting his status as a convicted murderer and his potential motives for cooperating with the prosecution. They argued that he was an unreliable witness, a manipulator who was willing to say anything to potentially improve his own situation.
So despite the defense's efforts to discredit Martin's testimony, the jury ultimately found Billy Ray guilty.
They did. In 2022, Billy Ray Turner was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison.
So after nearly a decade of uncertainty and speculation, both Shara and Billy Ray were held accountable for their roles in Lorenzen's death.
Yes, but these verdicts, while providing a measure of legal closure, don't fully erase the profound sense of loss and the unanswered questions that linger.
You mentioned earlier that the motive for the murder remained somewhat unclear. The prosecution focused on a life insurance policy, but were there other theories?
Well, there were whispers of other motives, rumors of jealousy, revenge, or even Lorenzen's alleged involvement in shady business dealings. However, none of these alternative theories were ever substantiated with concrete evidence. The true motivations behind this horrific act may forever remain a mystery.
It's a reminder that real life is often far more complex than any fictional narrative. There are nuances, contradictions, and unanswered questions that may never be fully resolved.
Precisely, and perhaps that's one of the most valuable takeaways from this deep dive into the Lorenzen Wright murder case. It's a stark reminder that even in the face of a guilty verdict, truth can be elusive, and some mysteries may never be fully solved. It forces us to confront the limitations of our understanding, the ambiguity that often surrounds human behavior, and the enduring power of loss and unanswered questions.
It's been a heavy but undeniably fascinating journey, exploring the depths of this case with you.
Indeed, we've learned about Lorenzen's life, his tragic death, and the long and winding road to justice. But more importantly, we've been reminded of the enduring power of truth, the importance of seeking answers, and the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable loss.
This case serves as a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface, even in the lives of those who seem to have it all.
Absolutely, and it underscores the fact that appearances can be deceiving, that the people we think we know can sometimes harbor secrets and motivations that are both surprising and deeply unsettling.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's been enlightening, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit unsettling.
And if you're eager for more deep dives into fascinating and complex topics, be sure to subscribe to our show. We have a whole world of captivating stories waiting to be explored.
Until next time, keep asking questions, keep seeking knowledge, and keep diving deep.